AP Environmental Science with Miss Haskins, Feeding the World. Feeding the World is a 3-part series here where we talk about human nutritional needs, then modern large-scale farming methods, and then alternatives to industrial farming methods. How much do you know about farming? How about a farm where animals do most of the work? It is common for a farmer growing juicy tomatoes or sweet apples to become a local hero, but often does a farmer become known throughout an entire country. Here we have the story of Joe Salatin from Virginia. He's been featured in the best-selling book and 2 major motion pictures. He's the author of numerous popular books like Holy Cow and Hog Heaven, A Food Buyer's Guide to Farm-Friendly Food, and Everything I Want to Do is Illegal, War Stories from the Local Food Front. His farming has drawn attention from authors, filmmakers, and many others because he raises vegetables and livestock in a sustainable, organic way. Now, before I go any further, you should know something about Joe. Joe calls himself the sissy farmer. He thinks there's nothing sexy about the way that he farms. In fact, he says it's almost emasculating because he doesn't go out and dig up a bunch of earth and come home smelling like diesel, kill acres and acres of earthworms due to degradation. In fact, he says when I come home and my wife says, "Hey, honey, how did it go today?" He says, "Well, I made the cows happy." And that's just not a masculine way of farming. But in any event, Joe understands that when farming is done properly, he can replicate many of the processes that exist in nature, and it becomes a little bit more better for the animals and for the farming itself. So he calls himself a grass farmer because grass is the foundation of all the trophic pyramids. On his polyface farm, he grows grass and it's harvested. When it's harvested, he dries it in the sun and then it turns into hay, which he feeds the cattle. And the cattle are processed into beef and consumed by humans. But that is the only piece of intricate food chain that he has created on his farm. And without all those chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, it's a wonder that he can even be profitable at all these days. But as cattle graze a field, they leave behind large piles of manure that become the energy source for a large number of grubs and fly larvae. And before the larvae can hatch into flies and cause problems, Joe brings in the sanitation crew. Not people spraying pesticides all over the farm, but we call those chickens. As the chickens eat the larvae, they spread the nitrogen-rich cow manure and deposit it all over the grass. And they continue to lay eggs, which are tasty and nutritious. And Joe explains that his method reproduces the processes of nature in which birds typically follow herbivores and take advantage of their waste situation. He uses other animals to take care of the buildup of cow manure. In the wintertime, when the cows are inside the barn, some farmers push the manure out of the doorway, and it ends up in these large piles. And then by spring, you can definitely smell that the manure has piled up. But Joe here, he continues to lay straw layer upon straw layer on top of the manure, which consists of usually dried stalks and plants and wood chips. And he allows the floor of his barn to rise higher and higher and higher during the winter. Occasionally, he even throws down some corn. During the winter, the manure, straw, corn layer decomposes and it produces an actual heat, which allows the cattle to use less energy and it allows them to stay warm. In the spring, when the cattle go outside to pasture, he brings pigs into the barn. The pigs have an excellent sense of smell, and they dig up the layers of manure and straw with their snouts, and they're looking for this fermented corn that is hidden underneath everything. Within a few weeks, the pigs provide him with a barn full of thoroughly mixed compost, and it requires no machinery to make. So his animals have mixed manure and straw for him, and they've gained nutrients and calories. These are just two examples of ways that one farmer uses a natural process and knowledge of plants and animals in a natural way to grow food that is good for human consumption. Other farmers are interested in sustainable farming and find ways to feed the human population by working with, but not against, the natural world. I suggest if you have an interest in these types of things that you just watch a couple YouTube videos of Joe Salatin and his interview process. He's quite the character of modern time farming. And everything he does is interesting and comical in a lot of ways.